Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to this exclusive Jan Ki Baat conversation. Now, this is the 15th episode of the JKB conversation, and today I am extremely delighted that the last episode, which was with Anupam Kher, has gone viral, and today I have with me a very distinguished guest, somebody who's changed the entire dynamics of an industry. Well, let me tell you, viewers, that he has been there in the top 50 most powerful Indians as per India Today in 2019. 3 days back, Sohail Seth, tweeted a very popular, public commentator that Mr. Amish Tripathi is unarguably one of the best writers of our time. And I am so delighted to have with me the author, the celebrity author, Mr. Amish Tripathi. People say he has completely changed the dynamics on how people look at writing. So and he has come up with his latest book, Sohail Dev, the King Who Saved India. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show, sir. Thank you so much. Hope you are keeping safe during the time of COVID, and he's joining us exclusively from London. Pleasure to have you.
Pleasure being here, Pradeep. I've always enjoyed your work and the deep insights you give into the political processes. I never comment on politics personally, of course, you know that. But I always follow politics, as every Indian does, and your insights are always, a pleasure to watch. So thank you so much for hosting me, and delight to be here.
Let me begin this interview, Mr. Tripathi, with your latest book. And this book, I have frankly not come across in the recent past so much excitement, enthusiasm, and expectation for a book and for an author. So from Amitabh Bachchan to Twinkle Khanna to Vivek Debroy, to name an individual, everybody has Amish Tripathi's latest book, Sohail Dev. Now, I want to ask you, Amish, well, I was Googling, and I was finding about Sohail Dev because your copy has not yet reached me. So I just get a Wikipedia, paragraph on Sohail Dev, and I just have your book is the first, entry in the Google list of searches on Sohail Dev. Why has it been that this king who saved India has been ignored? And number one. Number two, what is the main aspect which you are trying to bring through this book that people should read about?
I think the fault for this lies with our establishment historians. What scholar and economist Sanjeev Sanyal had said is true, that the history that is taught to us is the history of our invaders. It's not our history. It's the history of the people who invaded us. At least the history of the last 1,000 years that's taught to us. And I have to say, much to my embarrassment, and I think I'm well read. I read at least 5-6 books a month. I've been reading at that pace for decades. And my family's roots are from UP. My grandfather was a Pandit in Vishwanath Ji, and he used to teach at Banaras Hindu University. But even I had not heard of King Sohail Dev till a few years ago, when I heard the story of King Sohail Dev. And King Sohail Dev is known among some groups in the UP, but even in UP, not everyone knows it. And outside UP, almost no one has heard of him. And I heard of his story from a friend of mine, scholar Abhinav Prakash, and from Sanjeev Sanyal. King Sohail Dev is probably the most consequential hero that you've not heard of. He brought India 150 years of peace from the Turkic invasions. The Turks were originally from Central Asia. They were the military superpower from the 11th of the world, from the 11th to the 17th century. They destroyed much of the known world, and not just India, all over the world. They were probably the most fierce, barbaric warrior race the world has ever seen. Right? But King Sohail Dev defeated the Ghaznavid Turks in such a comprehensive manner that the Turks didn't dare to come back for 150 years. Shouldn't we know his story? Right? And not just him. So many of our heroes have been airbrushed out of history. Right? Not just King Sohail Dev. Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, for example. I live in Maharashtra. I've heard of him. And I remember when I was in school, I used to bristle at the way he was described in our national history books. They used to call him a mountain rat. Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. That's how they described him. And our history books, not some foreigners' history books, our history books describe Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj with that term. Right? Maharana Pratap is just a few lines. Rajendra Chola, whose empire was bigger than Akbar's, is just 2-3 lines in our books. The Gurjar Pratiharas are ignored. Let's be honest, who would have known of the Maratha Empire across India before Sanjay Leela Bhansali made his movie? Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
Then the Palas, the Buddhist Palas of Bengal, the Hoysalas of Kerala, Martanda Varma, Bakka Rani, the Adil Shahis of the Deccan. Our history has such a deep Delhi bias, and the history that is taught to us, and such a deep invader bias that we don't learn our own heroes. And this impacts our mindset today. We Indians, we see ourselves as a country of losers, as a country which lost every battle, as a country of cowards, when the truth is the exact opposite. We are the toughest buggers around. No Bronze Age culture has survived till today. Every single Bronze Age culture surrendered to the invaders. There were 3 groups of invaders who destroyed all classical cultures: Europeans, Arabs, Turks. They destroyed all classical cultures, and every single classical culture surrendered except us. We are still standing. China is not a classical culture. I keep repeating, China is not a Bronze Age culture. Emperor Qin is just 2,500 years old. So I'm talking about classical cultures. Okay? We are the only ones still standing. So actually, we are the toughest people around. We are the only ones who beat back the invaders. And every of those 3 communities which destroyed the classical invaders, Europeans, Arabs, Turks, they came to India too. But we are still standing. We are actually the toughest buggers around. But we don't learn the stories of our own heroes. Our resistance was fierce.
Absolutely, Amish, and in fact, I agree with you. And let me tell you that even when I was preparing for the civil services examination, I used to, Google. I used to go through the Tamil Nadu textbook in order to read about a lot of these heroes which you're talking about, because NCERT did not have their mention. I want to take a book review, I want to take a book review done about your book on July 1, 2020 in Swaraj magazine. And I quote from this. And it says, Amish brings forward the story of a hero forgotten by the Delhi historians. Now, there is a very, important aspect which I want to ask Amish, that why is it that Sohail Dev, who is so popular, so I have been to these area near Bahraich, Ayodhya, people know about Sohail Dev in that part, but as I move towards Ghazipur, hardly are people aware about it. So recently, you had...
Same if you move towards the east as well. As you move further towards Bihar, towards the deeper Purvanchal side, yes, sadly, and it is sad. Entire country should know him, not just UP.
So sorry, go ahead. Yes. So one aspect which you're talking about is why Sohail Dev was an inflection point, and how he saved at least more than 100 years of invasion. I want to understand that if a viewer wants to read this book, apart from what are the aspects which you are covering in this? So is it just about Sohail Dev and how he saved India, or is it also the cultural aspect during that time? Like how should I go into this book as a layman?
Pradeep, look, I am not a scholar. I'm a storyteller. The job of a scholar is to study primary sources. Primary sources means things which are written, ancient times, could be Sanskrit, could be written in Persian, written in Pali, could be written in Turkic, whatever, right? Or they could also be folk tales from ancient times. And a scholar's job is to study the primary sources and make a scholarly thesis or a book of what is the most likely series of events. I hope that my book triggers some interest, among various scholars. I mean, we have some wonderful new scholars who have emerged in the last few decades. Sanjeev Sanyal, Abhinav Prakash, who I've already mentioned, but Vikram Sampath, Hindol. I hope someone researches the story of King Suhail. But that's a job of scholars. A storyteller's job is different. A storyteller's job is to actually study the secondary sources, which means the job, the work that the scholars have written. Scholars study the primary sources and write non-fiction books of philosophy theses, which are then called secondary sources. And then my job as a storyteller is to study the secondary source and write it as a story or as an article, so which is understandable by the masses. Right?
Correct.
And the job of a storyteller is not that of a scholar, which is not to predict what exactly happened, because how can I know that? I'm not a scholar. A scholar should do that. My job as a storyteller is to capture what is the core philosophy of the story, right, and convey that through the wrapper of the story. So in my mind, what is the core philosophy that King Suheldev perhaps is trying to tell us across this chasm of time, across 1,000 years? What is the core message that King Suheldev is trying to tell us? I think it's a very, at the heart of it, there are many messages, but the heart of it is that when we Indians are united, we are freaking unbeatable. Okay?
True.
The problem, though, is more often than not, we Indians are divided. We are not united. Right? I've spoken of this many times. I mean, we Indians, we almost behave like our default state. When we are bored, when we don't know what to do, we start fighting with each other. It's almost like our default state. You know,
Right.
अंताक्षरी का जो line है ना, बैठे बैठे क्या करें, करना है कुछ काम, चलो एक दूसरे से लड़ाई start करते हैं. Okay, that's in effect, and we find some of the others silly reason, right? You know, language, caste, religion, region. We'll find some of the other silly reason. I think why the message of King Suheldev is even more relevant today. There is a foreign country trying to invade us. I am a diplomat, so I can't, name that country. But well, we all know who I'm speaking of. And we Indians have to be united at this point of time more than ever. We have to be united, and if we are united, we are tough, gritty people. We are the only civilization from the Bronze Age which is still alive. उनको तो क्या, हम किसी को भी हरा देंगे जो भी हमको अटैक कर रहे हैं. But the only risk that we have, we don't lack in bravery, we don't lack in resources. Only risk that we have, internal divisions. So often when foreign invaders have defeated us, if we look deeper into the stories, it's not that the foreign invaders defeated us, we defeated ourselves because of our infighting. Third Battle of Panipat, that is exactly what happened. Okay, with so many of our battles, internal divisions. Okay, sure. So that is the key message to me. That's what I'm trying to convey through the story.
In fact, one of the, another reviews of your book says that while in our curriculum we are taught about divided India, divided Indians who feel against a united enemy, who fell against a united enemy, we are introduced to a different India in Legend of Suheldev, an India where grassroots are more united than ever you can imagine. Now, can you quote something from the book or one of these, instances in your story which reflect this philosophy which you are trying to bring in the book?
One of the incidents I have in the book is King Suheldev sends one of his emissaries, one of his ministers called Kashinath, an old a guru of his, and a minister, sends him to Rajen Chola's court. Rajen Chola was the most powerful man in the world at that time, to ask him for help. And Rajen Chola says that is there a king who is actually inviting me into his own kingdom? Is that what he wants? So he said, then Kashinath tells Rajen Chola, no, my lord, we are just saying that you should stop the Turks at the borders itself. Why let them come close to your empire? So then Rajen Chola says that, are you saying that I cannot defend my own land if the Turks dare to come to the Chola Empire? He doesn't say to the Chola Empire, but the implication being that, are you saying I cannot defend my own land if the Turks come here? So Kashinath says, yes, you can defend your own land, great emperor, which is precisely why I'm asking for your help. So Rajen Chola gets confused. So then Kashinath says, North India may not be a part of your empire, great emperor, but it is a part of your land. And then he quotes, a line which I've used in many books of mine, which is from the Vishnu Puran. North of the ocean and south of the Himalaya, lies the noble nation of Bharat, and there live the descendants of Bharat, and this is our land. And Rajen Chola just smiles because Rajen Chola had done many things earlier already, which is the subject of another book, to Mahmud of Ghazni after the desecration of Somnathji. Rajen Chola just smiles, and I just described that you can see his emotion on his face. And then Kashinath just says Jai Ma Bharti, which I say is unusual because in a diplomatic trip, normally you have praise for the kings,
Correct,
who was Kashinathji's boss. You have praise for the gods, but Kashinath does nothing like that. He praises only the motherland. And so then Rajan Chola replies, and in that reply, Kashinathji knows the answer that he'll get the next day, because Rajan Chola replies in his native Tamil. He says, Bharata Thai Vadaga, that long live our Mother India.
Wow, that is amazing. Mr. Tripathi, apart from being a very celebrated author, you also have a lot of profound views on a lot of topics. And I want to quote one of your earlier interviews, which you had given to the Indian Express on 29th March 2017. And in this, there is a very interesting quote, which you say that I do not believe in left wing or right wing. I am just proud of Indian culture. Now, at this moment, everywhere in the political discourse, social discourse, or generally the discourse is about the left or the right wing. Do you feel that, in fact, I remember one of your quotes which you said that generally these wars are on Twitter, the Cold Wars are on Twitter, the masses are, completely not involved in it and not related to it. So is this a new narrative which is being formed, or do you believe that there is a balancing of narrative which is taking place, or this whole thing of left wing, right of center, left of center? How do you see this? Is this just, I would say, political terms which are being used, or do they have any merit? Because if you look 5 years, say in the era of 2010, 2012, I did not come across general parlance using right wing. This has emerged in the past few years, at least being used very widely. How do you look at this?
Let me ask you one thing. What were you taught in school about the number of seasons that India has?
The same which you have.
Summer, autumn, winter, spring.
Winter, yeah.
Spring,
yes.
yeah. Yes. I was taught the same thing when I was in the second standard. My son, who's 11 years old, is taught the same thing. And in the second standard, I remember I'd raised my hand. Ma'am, summer, autumn, winter, spring, monsoon kahan gaya? The number of seasons that we are taught is actually the number of seasons that you have in Europe. Europe has 4 seasons. India actually has 6 seasons. Okay. I'm just giving you one example. In almost every sphere, what we have is we don't have Indian reality. We don't have the Indian climate, the Indian thought system. What we have done and what our establishment has done for the first 60, 70 years of our independence is just copy-pasted European theories onto us.
Okay. Absolutely.
And I gave the example of the seasons because not only is it in theories, it goes to the theater of the absurd, where even our seasons, what we are taught in our school, have nothing to do with Indian realities. Okay. Because this is a question every child should ask, yaar, monsoon kahan gaya? And monsoon is the heart of the Indian season. What is the year? What is the Sanskrit word for year? Varsh. Where is it derived from? From the Sanskrit word for monsoon, Varsha. Our ancestors realized that the Indian way of life is built around the monsoon. What is the name for a nation? Varsham. Also derived from the word for rain, from monsoon. And we don't even teach that in our seasons. And similarly, in our understanding of the political and social theater, we use Western theories which have absolutely nothing to do with India. Okay. True. And which is why these theories are discussed normally in elite circles. Most Indians from the roots, they don't understand ki, yaar, aap bol kya rahe ho? Okay. Where did left and right come from? They emerged from the French French Revolution era. Okay. Where the left had a certain view, economically more anti-monarchical, right had a certain view, more conservative, and pro-monarchy. But India doesn't fit those paradigms. India, for example, we worship wealth. We don't think wealth is something wrong. So we are not socialist in that sense, but we are also very inclusive in our approach to money. Like the Mahabharata, in the Mahabharata, Vidur ji says very clearly, there are two ways to waste money. One is by giving charity to the unworthy. Second is by not giving charity to the unworthy. Boss, this sounds like leftist thought. But on the same time, we have that boss. You have to respect the Vaishya. You have to respect the people who make money, because otherwise, how will society make money, right? How will society have wealth to take care of the poor? That sounds right wing. That's the point I'm trying to make. These pat left-right narratives don't sit on Indian realities. These are Western narratives which are just force-fitted onto Indian realities. So which is why, and the Indian reality does not go into simplistic, I am opposing and I'm here and I have to show loyalty to my tribal. No, it's not that way. It is the search for truth in every way. Adi Shankaracharya ji was a very devout Shaivite. Okay. You read his Atma Shatakam, I mean, it's a kind of prayer that any Shaivite, I hear it, I start crying. It is so deep and beautiful, right? But he's written among the most beautiful Vaishnava names as well, right? And there's no contradiction, not in the Indian way. We have to learn our own ways, which are connected to our roots, which don't sit in silly opposition like this. And this left and right has something to do with the West. It has nothing to do with Indian realities. Just like 4 seasons has nothing to do with Indian realities. India has 6 seasons.
Can I then say, Mr. Tripathi, in fact, I have also experienced this in my travel. I've traveled more than 400 constituencies, and then I look at the discourse which I see across in the media. Have we in the past been a nation which believes more in borrowed intellects rather than original intellects? And when original intellects, come up with new theories, come up with new ways of looking at things, whether it is culture or any stream, but they are somehow secluded, because there has been a lobby in this country which has believed in borrowed intellect, and they've believed in, as you suggested, copy pasting things and putting it as it is in the Indian context. Are we still in that zone, or do you feel that there is a change which is taking place across the country, at least on this part?
Pradeep, I'm telling you, I'm living in London right now.
Yeah.
I find that there are some in India who are more British or loyal to the British Raj than British in London, modern British in London. Okay. Because they seem to have moved on, but many people in India have not moved on.
Yeah.
Okay. There is a real India, and there is a tiny crust on top. That crust dominated many parts of society, corporate world, sports, everything, politics, everything. Slowly, as democracy has deepened, you'll find that the influence of that crust has gone down, and the real India is risen. And I'm not belittling the crust or the elite. Look, there is a certain way that the elite in every industry, in every part of the world behaves. Our elite is not any different. It's the way the world works here. No one is, evil or, for behaving that way. It's the way the world works. Outsiders have to try harder. Elites will protect themselves and their children. It's obvious. I mean, it's the way it has always been. Right? And we must also have the humility to realize that the children of today's outsiders will become the elite of tomorrow. True. And for all they may behave the same way. We have to train our children well, that they behave decently. Right? Or they try and behave with an open mind in their own selfish interest. They should allow outsiders in their own selfish interest. Putting that aside, I think progressively parts of the influence of the old upper crust has reduced in various areas. First in corporates, now in sports, in politics, but it is yet to reduce in academia.
I want to come to that point, and this is where my next question.
Yes, the real India needs to rise. But I just want to make one last point. The real India must rise with deep connection with our roots and learning from our ancestors. What does that mean? No hatred. No hatred, no anger. Satyam bruat, priyam bruat. It doesn't mean that we will tolerate things which are untrue from the upper crust, but no hatred, no anger. Okay, we will behave in a way that should make our ancestors proud.
Absolutely. This is, this is where I want to, lead this conversation towards an extremely important topic, and this is where I really want your opinion on. See, on 27 September 2018, Mr. Tripathi, a very senior minister, said that, we are proud that we have not rewritten a single chapter in the past 4 years. Now, I don't want you to comment on that. But, there is a huge sentiment on the ground, and this is not the sentiment on Twitter, social media, but this is a general sentiment which I even find in when I travel across the country, like to all these small towns and everywhere else, that somehow our history, as you have also suggested, has been not truly taught to us. It has always been either taught as consequence of events. It has not taught to us as it has to, and it has either been an history of innovators, which you have suggested. My direct question to you, Mr. Tripathi, is that, and I will be as direct as I can be, that why can't you, Sanjeev Sanyal, and other people come on a committee, get the thing going, and get a fresh perspective of Indian history? I'm not saying that, you completely discount what is there. At least provide an alternate history. Let the people of this country judge. Let the students judge. What do they believe? But right now, there is a situation that if somebody enters the CBSE schools or any school in this country, he will not be taught that history. He will either be taught the consequence of events. He will be too embroiled in giving examinations. Where are we building the next generation? Now, everybody will not get a chance to read an Amish Tripathi. So my question to you is, Mr. Tripathi, why can't we formalize these philosophies which you are trying to, inculcate through your book, which have been the Bharatiya philosophies, to the formal education system? What is the way to it? Why have we not done it in the past so many years? Do we expect that to happen in the coming years? Or will it just remain to certain Twitter handles quoting certain parts of our histories that this is not there in the NCERT book and the other thing is not there in the NCERT books?
There are two things to this, and I've spoken of it often. I understand that it's difficult, so I'm not gonna belittle the effort that needs to go into it. But the effort is very critical. The education system has to be connected to our roots. Right now, it is not. Right now, education system is designed in a way, as I've said often, कि किसी तरह हमको अंग्रेज बना दो बस.
Absolutely.
It's designed that way. It's 100%. Designed to turn our children into copies of the British. And this is not just a problem in history. This is a problem everywhere. Okay. In mathematics, it is nothing of Bodhayana, nothing of Bhaskaracharya. In medicine, it is nothing of Shushruta Charak. We don't teach Ayurveda. In architecture, we are teaching, Western principles, not Vastu Shastra. Vastu Shastra is derided as, as something for superstitious people. कि यहाँ पे एक दरवाजा बना दो. That's not what Vastu Shastra is, boss. Vastu Shastra is a science. In astronomy, in chemistry, in everywhere. I'm not anti-West. There are many good things in the West. It has been the most successful civilization of the last 4 centuries. We should learn from them as well. But the roots and the foundation have to be Indian in every subject. Yoga, pranayam is good for you, right? Why should it not be taught in every school and college? Yes, it does have Hindu-Buddhist roots. I am not denying that. Okay, but the ambulance service has Christian roots. I'm sure you know that, right? I mean, what does the cross in Red Cross? What is it supposed to signify, right? So I've given this example often that if you're not a Christian, should you not get into an ambulance just because it has Christian roots? That's silly, no? I mean, if you've had an accident, get into the freaking ambulance, right? It's the same with yoga and pranayam. Of course, it has Hindu-Buddhist roots, of course, right? But it is good for you, so do it. And no one is forcing you to convert, like no one forces you to convert to get into an ambulance, right? we have to connect our education system to our roots. We will benefit from it. Like, let me give you an example. There are real life, problems that we face because of our education system. Look at our buildings that are built in India. They are so inappropriate for the Indian climate. Like an example, like I'm in London right now. In London, glass wall buildings, or in Western Europe, in Northeast US, in Canada, glass wall buildings make a lot of sense. There's a shortage of sun out here. It's cold. You have a glass wall building, all right? Heating cost comes down. You have light. It makes sense, right? But in India, boss, there is no shortage of the sun. The sun is there all the time, even in winter, and the sun is strong, right? If you build a glass wall building in India, what you are essentially building is a giant microwave oven, right? It becomes so hot. All of us who worked in banks or any office, we know that. I used to add a glass wall cabinet. So obviously, फिर अंदर से AC blast कर रहे हैं, energy cost goes up. It's and why do architecture students do this? Because उनके दिमाग में उनको अंग्रेज बना दिया है. So they want to copy European designs, even though it has nothing to do with Indian realities. They will not study Vastu Shastra and Indian materials, like the concept of a courtyard in the center of a building. Why is it there? Because air circulation improves, which is good in the Indian climate. The point is, there are real life problems we are facing because of our education system. This reform has to be done. Now, Pradeep, what I would say is this: we are a democracy. Okay, so it is our job to put pressure on our politicians. And to be fair to our politicians, they will do what gets them votes. Okay, we are a democracy. We are not like authoritarian countries in our neighborhood where the people are not listened to. So how many of us have made it? I've made it repeatedly. I've spoken of it. I've written articles, and till it can't be done, I'm writing my own books to get the knowledge out. That's what all of us should do. I'm after True Indology. He's a brilliant Twitter profile.
Yes,
but that True Indology needs to write books. Okay?
Absolutely.
The tweets say, it's not going to help.
You need documented knowledge.
To write a book, right? Many people like this, they need to write books, right? That's what will get knowledge out. Having said that, we have to keep, speaking of this and putting pressure on our politicians. Please reconnect our education system to our roots. Teach the Ramayana and Mahabharata in our education system. Teach yoga, pranayam, the way the Pathshalas, Gurukuls and Madrasas used to be before the British destroyed us.
I will also give you a suggestion, Mr. Tripathi. You should launch a school too, in which completely alternate, mode of education is provided. And I'll tell you why you should launch a school. Because you yourself, in one of your interviews, have said, and I quote, if we include our ancient culture in modern education system, we will get wonderful results. So
we will become naturally liberal. We will realize that we are not being westernized in being liberal. We are being truly Indian. If we fight for women's rights, if we fight for LGBT rights, we are not being Western, we are being genuinely Indian, because that's what our ancestors believed.
Yeah, in fact, if you read, I've read a lot of your books, and the way all these original texts were as liberal as it gets. But the issue is that in India, people think that liberalism is equal to being Western, which is not true.
Sadly.
But it's not. You should launch a school is what I will, suggest you as a friend. But let me now go, because you have to run for another conversation with a celebrity after this.
So you're a celebrity, yeah?
You're going to a very big celebrity after this. I've checked your Twitter profile and my team has told me, so I don't want to waste my time. I want to go to another aspect which is a bit controversial, but this is something which you have flagged. And this is a tweet on 26th June 2020, and where Sanjeev Sanyal had pointed about nepotism and favoritism in Indian publishing industry. And I want to quote your tweet, where you quoted his tweet and said, "Thanks, Sanjeev, for bringing me into the conversation. Yes, there is an elite which controls publishing, just like an elite group in every industry. In Indian publishing, to be part of that group, you have to be from that Indian anglicized elite. They publish each other, give each other awards, run the esteemed industry, as one of the individuals called it. Many of them can't even name the 4 Vedas, and they call those who quote from the Upanishads lowbrow. And we have to agree, because they insist." And then you go on. No, I want to talk about this cartel in the Indian publishing industry because I'll tell you, I personally experienced this. So when I was writing my first book, Modi Mandate, which was a documentation of, from across 400 constituencies where I did not have any hearsay conversations. And I had to run after publishers, and two prominent publishers just rejected because I was telling the story of how, the Prime Minister won from the voice of the people. And it was not layered because there was nothing layered in a verdict which gets you 300 plus seats. So I have also come across this cartel which decides what is intellectual, what is not intellectual, what should be published, what should not be published. Now, in the last question, you said that True Indology should write a book. Now, my question is, how do you break this cartel, and how can individuals who do not have a very, big background to write books? In fact, your first book, how you came across publishing your first book. How do you break this cartel? And what is your view on this cartel? How can new upcoming writers without any past background of experience writing or not coming from the elite institutes actually go ahead and write?
My first book was rejected by every publisher it was sent to. I self-published my first book. And, my background is such that I come from a very rooted background. My parents both studied in the Hindi medium. And you know how it was. I'm 45. So in India that I was growing up in, if you didn't know English, you suffered. And my parents were talented, but they suffered because they couldn't speak English too well. They were clear that their children will not suffer what they suffered. So they sent the four of us to schools and colleges, which was way beyond their income status, way beyond their social status. And my mother used to, and my parents had no savings, nothing. All their money was invested in our education. And she used to tell us that that it is your duty to succeed because of the sacrifices your parents are making for you. Right? And all four of us have that fire in us. All four of us. We have to work hard. We have to succeed. The point I'm trying to make is the fact that there is an elite which will look out for its own people, for its own ideology. It's not a surprise. It's not just true of publishing. It is true of every industry at every point in human history. There has always been an elite, and it's natural to expect that an elite will look out for itself. As I had said earlier, there will come a time when those of us who are outsiders, maybe our grandchildren will be the elite, and then there'll be others, outsiders, fighting them. That's the way the world works, right? It all goes in cycles. We are Indians, we understand. The world doesn't work in a linear manner. It actually goes in cycles. So which means if you're an outsider, you obviously have to try harder. You have to expect that. And some members of the elite will help you because they like you, as some have, to be honest. Many of them will try and hurt you. Many of them will insult you. And don't waste your time on those insults. It's one of the things I've realized. That if people are trying to insult, don't waste time on that, because you waste energy in that. Energy which you should be focusing on work. I work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. You'll notice rarely do I get into Twitter fights. I don't get into controversy. I think it's all a waste of time. Focus on work, right? Because then 30 years later, I would have contributed something to Mother India, to a culture that I love. Rather than fighting every day, just say, you get distracted, right? You were speaking about our leader. Look at the leader. How much does he waste time on fighting? He focuses on work, no? Just focus on work. That's what an outsider should do. Having said that, what does upset me is not that the elite behaves in a manner that elites always behave. That is not what upsets me. What upsets me is the disdain for our culture, for Hinduism. That upsets me. Okay. I have heard, jibes, which I will not repeat here, but the usual jibes that are thrown at Hinduism. The way I wanted the goddess to be respected, which I mentioned in the tweet, and I wanted it with a capital G, and I don't care if it breaks English grammar rules. It's my book, right? And the same elite is very happy to break English grammar rules when a Western transgender wants a preferred pronoun, them, they. Does that follow grammar rules? Western transgenders, yes. They want the language changed. But our elite is very happy to break the grammar rules for white-skinned Western transgenders. But they will not break the grammar rules for us goddess worshippers. Why? and this shows a disdain for Hinduism. You know, the fact that among the greatest genocides of the 20th century is the destruction of the minorities, primarily backward caste and scheduled caste Hindus in Pakistan. Right?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely.
You can't even speak of this. And
Absolutely.
I speak of non-Hindu minorities in other countries as well. But why
Yes.
can't we speak of this issue? And it is subtle, it is there, and that is what upsets. Not that the elite will look out for their children and that outsiders have to try harder. That is understandable, yeah. And it's the way the world always works. Won't we make it easy for our children and our grandchildren? Or even if we don't try hard, just the fact that I have been successful in life, or that my parents made so many sacrifices, so I've been successful. My child's life will be easier. Your child's life will be easier. It's the way the world works. That is not what is upsetting. It is the disdain for Hinduism that is upsetting. That's what I spoke of in my tweet thread.
Mr. Tripathi, one thing which I really want your comment on is that what I also have, encountered is a lot of people who write great stuff in other Indian languages, whether it is Hindi, Marathi, and all these. They somehow not able to get that platform to influence the larger narrative, which an English writer does. Now, we all know the reason about it. Now, how can we bridge this gap? Because successful writers like you also have an onerous responsibility to mushroom and guide and nurture new young talent across the country. Because as I travel, Mr. Tripathi, and I speak to people in the villages and all, I see massive talent of storytelling in India. India is a country of storytellers, is what I tell people. And these storytellers tell it in different languages. How can we bridge this gap? Because, there are so many wonderful writings in different languages, whether it is Hindi, Bengali, Marathi, all of it. But somehow the wider public spectrum is always covered by writers who've written in English. I don't have any problem with that. My question to you is that how can I bridge this gap?
मैं आपके बात से बिल्कुल सहमत हूँ। ये प्रश्न मुझे जागरण मंच पे भी पूछा गया था। मैं क्या था जो उत्तर भारत का सबसे प्रचलित जो अखबार है दैनिक जागरण, और वहां पे मुझसे ये, क्योंकि वहां पे सब वार्ता हिंदी में ही हो रही थी। अब मैं मूल रूप से काशी का हूँ, मेरे पिताजी काशी के, मुझे हिंदी में बात करने में कोई कठिनाई नहीं है। आपसे भी अभी क्योंकि आपने ये सवाल पूछा इसलिए मैं हिंदी में जवाब दे रहा हूँ।
इसके बाद वाला सवाल हिंदी में
मंच पे मुझे पूछा गया, किसी ने मुझसे पूछा कि देखिए आपकी हिंदी तो काफी अच्छी है। हम देखते हैं कि जो भी अंग्रेजी के जो लेखक आते हैं, जो अंग्रेजी में लेखन करते हैं, कई बार अगर वो हिंदी में बातचीत कर रहे हैं तो वो बात कर नहीं पाते, बात उनकी रुकती रहती है। लेकिन आप तो आराम से बात कर रहे हैं, तो आप हिंदी में क्यों नहीं लिखते हैं? तो मैंने उनसे कहा, आप दिल पे हाथ रख के सच बताइए, अगर मैंने हिंदी में अपना लेखन किया होता, और चूंकि मैं मुंबई से हूँ, आप मुझे इस मंच पे बुलाते क्या? कड़वा सत्य है लेकिन सत्य है।
बिल्कुल।
हम रोते रहते हैं कि अंग्रेजी का प्रभाव नहीं, दबाव है। मैंने वही लाइन वहां पे कही कि भाई अंग्रेजी का तो प्रभाव नहीं, अंग्रेजी का दबाव है। लेकिन दबाव कौन बना रहा है? हम खुद बना रहे हैं। आप जैसे मैंने उनसे पूछा, आपने शिवाजी सावंत जी का नाम सुना है क्या? वो मराठी में लिखते हैं, बहुत सुंदर किताब लिखी उनने मृत्युंजय। हर मराठी जो भी पाठक हैं, सबने वो मृत्युंजय पढ़ी।
मेरे एक दोस्त ने मुझे गिफ्ट करी थी ये बहुत।
लेकिन उत्तर प्रदेश में किसी ने नहीं पढ़ी है। एस.एल. भैरप्पा जी जो कन्नड़ा में लिखते हैं, मेरे हिसाब से तो उनका तो भारत रत्न का दर्जा है। इतनी उम्दा किताबें लिखी है उन्होंने। लेकिन यूपी के तो छोड़िए, जो बगल में जो प्रदेश है महाराष्ट्र, उनमें भी कई लोग ने नहीं सुना है एस.एल. भैरप्पा जी का काम। और इसमें फिर हम जो अंग्रेजी वर्ग है, जो लटन्स दिल्ली में रहता है, उनको तो दोष नहीं दे सकते इसका। उनने कहाँ रोका है भाई? अगर हम एक दूसरे से अपने भारतीय भाषा में बात कर रहे हैं, अनुवाद कर रहे हैं, तो वो रोकेंगे क्या? क्यों रोकेंगे? तो भाई अगर दिल पे हाथ रख के साफ मन से कहा जाए तो दोषी कौन है?
सब है,
हम खुद ही हैं।
जी,
हम खुद ही हैं। अगर हम अपनी मातृभाषा को इज्जत नहीं दे रहे, मैं ये नहीं कह रहा कि आप अंग्रेजी विरोधी बन जाइए, अंग्रेजी सीखिए, क्योंकि पेट की भाषा अंग्रेजी है।
जी।
अच्छी नौकरी आपको अंग्रेजी के साथ मिलेगी,
हम्म।
लेकिन आप अपनी अगर दिल की भाषा को भूल जाए, अगर आप अपनी मातृभाषा को भूल जाए,
हम्म।
तो गलती हम सबकी है ना।
जी।
कितने मैं देखता हूँ कितने युवा पीढ़ी के लोग हैं आजकल जो हिंदी को, मराठी को, तमिल को वो रोमन स्क्रिप्ट में पढ़ रहे हैं, अंग्रेजी के स्क्रिप्ट में पढ़ रहे हैं। तो शब्द को उच्चारण का तो मतलब पूरा मतलब न और ण में तो कुछ फर्क है नहीं, त ट में कुछ फर्क है नहीं। तो
इसका रास्ता
कहीं न कहीं
बताइए।
गलती हमारी भी है।
नहीं, गलती में मान लो, रास्ता क्या है इसका? कुछ रास्ता
पता
है
नहीं,
इसका?
आसान नहीं है क्योंकि जैसा मैंने कहा अंग्रेजी का हमारे देश में सिर्फ प्रभाव नहीं, अंग्रेजी का दबाव है। और मैं
बिल्कुल।
प्रभाव के विरोध में नहीं खड़ा हूँ, लेकिन उसके दबाव के विरोध में खड़ा हूँ। कई चीजें कर सकते हैं
जी।
हम। जितने भी अगर लोक कार्यक्रम हैं, जो किताबें हैं, जितना हो सके हम
मुझे
अपने प्रदेशीय भाषा, अपने क्षेत्रीय भाषा में बातचीत करें,
मुझे
अपने
लगता है
बच्चों से अपनी क्षेत्रीय भाषा में बातचीत करें।
मुझे लगता है माफी चाह रहा हूँ, मैं आपको रोक रहा हूँ, पर मुझे ये लगता है कि जितने भी सब अखबार है, मीडिया चैनल्स हैं, ये सब अगर हिंदी में लिखने वाले जो लेखक हैं उनको अगर फ्रंट पेज कवरेज दें, उनको भी 2-2, 3-3 पेज की कवरेज दें, तो अपने आप पूरा सिस्टम चेंज हो जाएगा। पर ये
सही
होता
बात,
नहीं
सही
है कि
बात।
सब ये।
और जो मैंने प्रश्न वो लखनऊ में उठाया था, वो फिर से मैं दोहरा रहा हूँ। मैंने अपने माँ-बाप की तकलीफें देखी हैं।
जी।
कुछ हुनर की कमी नहीं थी, लेकिन अंग्रेजी बहुत कमजोर थी।
बिल्कुल सही।
और उनने हम चारों को ये कूट-कूट के हमारे मन में भरा, जो कठिनाई हमें हुई तुम लोगों को नहीं होगी, तुम लोग लड़ोगे और अंग्रेजी में लड़ोगे।
जी।
और उस मंच पे मुझे इसीलिए बुलाया गया क्योंकि मैंने अंग्रेजी में लिखा है, ये सत्य है।
जी, मेरे को आखिरी 2 सवाल
सुधार हमें
पूछने
करना है,
हैं।
सुधार
मैं
हमें
रोक
करना है।
तो आपको मैं रोक रहा हूँ क्योंकि मेरे को आखिरी 2 सवाल पूछने, और जल्दी से मैं आपका आंसर लूंगा क्योंकि आपको भाग जाएंगे फिर दूसरे अपने इंटरव्यू में।
हाँ, अभी 2 मिनट बस।
आप क्योंकि बहुत ही व्यस्त व्यक्ति हैं, इसके बाद आप बड़े सेलिब्रिटीज के साथ जाएंगे। मेरा सवाल आपसे ये है
जी।
अमीश, कि एक चीज पे मैं आपकी राय चाहता हूँ जो विश्व भर में अभी हो रहा है, ये ब्लैक लाइव्स मैटर, स्टैचूज गिराए जा रहे हैं। एज अ पर्सन जो हिस्ट्री को समझता है, पढ़ता है, क्या ये पॉसिबल, जो ये नया मैं देख रहा हूँ दौर की, भाई कोई व्यक्ति, कोई भी हिस्ट्री का दौर की उस वक्त की कुछ अहमियत होती है, उस वक्त के कुछ सर्कमस्टेंसेस होते हैं, जो आप अमेरिका में देख रहे हैं, अलग अलग जगह देख रहे हैं, इसमें आप क्या किस तरीके से देखते हैं? मतलब मेरे को तो कभी कभी लगता है कि मैं अतिशोक्ति है कि मान लीजिए जो कल मैं एक फॉक्स न्यूज देख रहा था, उसमें लोग बोल रहे थे कि जॉर्ज वॉशिंगटन की भी स्टैचू को गिरा दिया जाए, वो भी अब रिलेवेंट नहीं है। तो इसमें आप क्या देखते हैं, क्यों हो रहा है ये सब, और ये क्या मतलब दर्शाता है, हमको क्या समझना चाहिए इससे?
देखिए, I'm in London, I'm in the West, and I'm a diplomat, so I will be a little careful in this
I
answer.
understand that.
And also, we don't have that much time. So,
I want a very short response.
there is a cycle of history. There is a cycle of history.
Yes.
As we're saying, uh, yesterday's elites will become today's rebels, and today's rebels will become tomorrow's elites. It's the way it works.
Yes.
The West has a simplistic approach to history, so they see it as a line. Time begins and there is thing, and then there's judgment day. Whereas Indians have a much more nuanced take on it. We see time as a cycle, and we understand that things go in cycles. And the fact that there will be a rebellion by those who have been left behind is understandable. What has happened in the era of globalization in the last 30 years, countries like China, India have benefited a lot. The middle classes in countries like UK, US have suffered. The elite has benefited, but the middle classes have suffered. They've been hollowed out. That is an economic reality. Part of this is a play out of the social forces over the last 30 years. The only thing I always say is, any rebellion is good because it causes change in society,
Correct.
which makes it more inclusive. So it's good. But rebellion which is based on hatred is not good.
Okay.
So for today's non-whites to hate today's whites for what their ancestors did is a little silly.
Absolutely.
Just like in India, we have the concept of historical guilt on upper caste on one end and on Muslims on the other end.
Yeah.
That these Muslims should apologize for what Mahmud Ghazni did. But that हम लोग poison बस ऐसे ही फिर घुमाते जा रहे हैं. It's the same thing on upper caste, backward caste. Poison घुमाते जा रहे हैं. So should there be reform? Yes. India has carried out the greatest, the biggest positive discrimination affirmative action program in the history of humanity with our reservations program for scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and backward castes. Western countries have not even done an iota of what we have done. It is the biggest positive discrimination program in the history of humanity. Okay?
Yes.
What has been done for our backward castes, scheduled castes, and scheduled tribes. But we should do those reforms. But can we do those reforms without hatred? That's something to learn from Mahatma Gandhi, from Gautam Buddha. If we have hatred for someone else, it's a bit like holding a burning coal in your hand so that you'll throw it on someone else when they come. But in the meantime, your own hand is getting burned.
Absolutely. My last question to you, Mr. Tripathi, what are the top 2 books in your reading shelf right now?
Achha, absolute last question, Pradeep. I am reading. I've just finished Pawan Verma's, the brilliant diplomat. I've just finished his Greatest Ode to Lord Ram, which is he takes shlokas from the Ramcharitmanas of Goswami Tulsidas Ji, translates it, gives a commentary to it. Wonderful book, wonderful introduction to the Ramcharitmanas. The other one that I'm reading is The Insider on P.V. Narasimha Rao Ji, former Prime Minister, and who had written that book himself. So this is not the biography that Vinay Sitapati wrote. This is Narasimha Rao Ji's own work, and fascinating. I think he was a fascinating individual, not just a great Prime Minister, but a brilliant scholar.
Yes. Well, on that note, I would like to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Tripathi, and I will not take much of your time. Keep being safe in Kuwait, and hope to see you soon in India someday. Thank you so much.
You too, my friend. Take care. Jai Suheldev, Jai Maa Bharati.
Jai Bharat. Thank you.